Okay, so I'm here with Yasemin Acar, which for me is really quite an honor. We have had brief conversations before she sailed off with the Madleen, and she accepted to talk to me today. So this is really quite fantastic. First of all, I guess I should thank you. You've been doing, I mean, even now in the launch of the Handala, which is the new flotilla attempt to break the siege. I mean, I think that you've been doing not only what is, a woman after my own heart, as they say in English, but also in a way, what I have seen is that a lot of public discontent, a lot of people very opposed to the government's position and looking for some sort of expression of their moral consciousness and moral conscience. And I think that the Madleen came along and did kind of exactly that. It was actually action that did what a lot of people needed to do, but of course couldn't. So it's been very impressive to see. I want to ask you, first of all, I mean, if you can tell me a bit about how were those sort of final moments before the boarding of the Madleen.
Thank you, Martin, so much for inviting me and having this conversation with me. I'm currently in Sicily. As you mentioned before, the Handala has set sail. So we prepared the Handala. Some of the Madleen crew were there to say farewell and, of course, prepare the Handala so it can set sail to Gaza, meaning, we stacked up on humanitarian aid. We organized a lot of events for the local people and people that came from all over the world for the launch of the Handala. I was released from Israeli prison, I think almost 4 weeks ago. And the 11 amazing activists that were on the Madleen going to Gaza to break the illegal siege. The boarding was, what can you expect of the IOF? They came onto a humanitarian vessel carrying nothing but humanitarian aid. Is a non-violent mission, which we have communicated over and over again, and which is also the legacy of the Freedom Flotilla, because the Freedom Flotilla didn't start during the genocide. It started in 2008, and the Handala is our 37th ship. So there was always something wrong, right? And boarding a ship knowing it's non-violent, it's not carrying any weapons, it's only carrying humanitarian aid to a starving population in Gaza. They came in full gear with their rifles, and before they even boarded the Madleen, they attacked us. A quadcopter stood right above us and then attacked us with a chemical, which we still to this day don't know what the chemical was. We had that chemical all over our skin because we were exposed to it. It was impossible to not be exposed to it, and the Madleen was boarded by several IOF soldiers, and to mention, this unit is a special secret unit, one of the biggest killers, one of the worst killers, because they're also responsible, if you remember last year, the siege around the Al-Shifa hospital, and then the mass graves that we have seen after the siege was lifted 2 weeks later. This was the very same unit. So we were boarded by killer machines, and they held us for 20 hours. We were boarded, we were intercepted in international waters. We were 100 nautical miles away from Palestinian territory, and they claimed that we were in Israeli territory, which, is a contradiction, because the Israeli occupation forces, they were with us on board for 20 hours. So the point where they intercepted us to the point, until we got to Ashdod, it took us 20 hours. So you can imagine how far we were. And I don't have to really sit here and tell you this, because we had a tracker. Everyone in the world could track us. So they could see that we were in international waters, nowhere near to the occupiers,
Which really is the argument why many are saying that this was essentially an act of piracy by the Israelis in international waters, in the high seas. What was the treatment by the Israelis during those 20 hours?
as the world has seen, they had a plan. So there were three options. Kat said, either turn around. This was one option, and the two options, they were not for us. They were just like, you know, them telling us, we will either attack you, or we will, you know, arrest you. We will kidnap you. And we did not turn around because we did not, you know, get on the Madleen to turn around. And if we were to turn around, we would have turned around when we saw the first drone off the coast of Greece, which, you know, came almost every night to scare us and to, you know, conduct their psychological warfare. And the treatment, I mean, you know, there was psychological warfare. There was a lot of
Yasemin,
psychological warfare.
how do you make sense of, I mean, you live in Germany, you live in Berlin, I mean, most of the time in any case, just like me. And I mean, I wonder how do you make sense of this much impunity that the Israelis have in terms of operating on against the European coast and then in international waters?
Well, you mentioned it, right, off of the European coast, but this, we have to remember the conscience being attacked on 2nd of May in Malta. So the Maltese authorities have allowed a Hercules C-130 to be in their airspace for 7 hours and then conduct an attack, bombing us twice, risking the lives of 16 people. The European Union has not condemned it. It has not, you know, conducted an investigation. There was pure silence. The impunity, there is no sense. You cannot make sense of any of this, what we're seeing. We're seeing a live stream genocide. We've been seeing a population, Palestinians, being starved. And not just only since almost 5 months. This was right in the beginning when they said, we will starve the population in Gaza. So to no surprise, and all of the governments stayed silent and complicit, of course. And they even went so far to defund UNRWA, right? So they are all at fault here. They are all complicit, even in the starvation that we are seeing right now.
I mean, I can completely agree with you. I mean, I've been just going this morning, particularly through many of the quotes that Omar Shatz is taking to the ICC in order to accuse taking the Israeli government and former members of incitement to genocide. And I was looking at Netanyahu and so on. But the thing that is curious about sort of the attack in Malta and the attack in the Greek coast and the attack in international waters is that this is not really done among a group of people that they have systematically dehumanized. This is being done against European and American citizens, essentially on sort of European sovereign waters at least. And that means that there is a certainty of the Israelis in terms of their capacity to operate on European jurisdiction.
Well, I always say, if anyone who kept silent in Germany, for example, you know, thousands of people kept silent, and this is exactly what we have seen, you know, in the 30s when they had done this to the Jewish population in Germany. And the same is happening again. And the people that were silent, I always tell them, if you think that Palestine is too far away for you to care, guess what? They came into your backyard. And if we see such violence, such fascism, it will spread everywhere. Because what we're seeing with our governments, you know, they are supporting a far-right government, a fascist government, a government that, you know, has been conducting a genocide for almost nearly 2 years. They are in support of this, and you cannot be in support of this if you are not a fascist yourself. And the dehumanization of Palestinians, yes, but anyone who helps Palestinians or is in support of Palestine, the self-determination of Palestinians, and the right to self-defense is somewhat dehumanized as well. And this is, they don't do it openly in the media. They won't call an American what they call a Palestinian. But what we're seeing in Germany still is that they do this with the Palestinians in Germany. They dehumanize them, and they do it with the Muslim population, the Arab population within Germany. So there is a process of dehumanization if you open up the newspapers or TV.
There is actually a really incredible, I mean, it's really from an historical perspective, the Arab phobia and Islamophobia in Germany, if you have any sense of history at all, should really be making your hair stand on end, because the kind of conversation, the kind of talk, the kind of suppression, the demand for violence is really incredible. But I can tell you that as a Jew, I mean, I am investigated by the Berlin police anti-Semitism and trivialization of the Holocaust. So, I mean, nobody really, and this is quite a remarkable thing, right? Which is that European democracies have accepted to dismantle themselves for the sake of following the Israeli cue.
30% of the demonstrators in Germany are Jewish citizens. So Germany is gatekeeping anti-Semitism. This on itself is anti-Semitic, telling a Jew what to do, how to speak, and how not to speak. This is exactly what they have done before the Holocaust, and this led to the Holocaust, and they're doing it again.
Yeah, there is, I mean, I don't want to go too far into this, but there is a great line which was attributed to Goering, which is, in Germany, who is a Jew is decided by me.
Yes.
And it somehow feels like it's still Germany who decides what is a good Jew and what's a bad Jew. But it's also Germany which decides what is, whether an Arab is a human or not, or whether a Muslim is actually a viable citizen or not. And, I mean, anyway, I mean, it is really a very, very strange state of affairs. I wanted to ask you, how was the treatment while you were detained by the Israelis?
The treatment was not good. They hated us, obviously, because, we showed the people around the world what's really happening, because Israel has been diverting the attention. For 2 years, people have been seeing the genocide being live streamed. And of course, if you look at the nature of human beings, they get accustomed to certain things, Some people were watching babies being bombed while drinking a coffee in the morning. And for us, the normalization of this violence, the normalization of, the breach of international law and the normalization of genocide simply was not acceptable. And so the world looked at Gaza, because for us, it was important to always, and it is important to center Gaza. If it wasn't for Gaza and the siege and the genocide, what were we doing on the Madleen, right? So it's not about us. And our imprisonment is also not about us, because we have to think of over 10,000 political prisoners that are being kept hostage for many, many years by the Zionist entity. For over 400 of them are children. This is what we need to focus on. Yes, we were imprisoned, we were mistreated, and we knew that this was going to happen. And we were willing to go through that, because I always say it, and I will continue to say it, our lives are not more worth than the lives of people going through genocide.
No, I think you're completely right. I think that the reason why these questions become relevant politically is because if they're willing to do this to somebody who holds a European passport and it's basically sailing with like a peaceful mission and only carrying baby formula, you can understand what they're capable of to hostages, Palestinian hostages in Israeli detention systems. I mean, what they're capable of doing to children, Palestinian children. I think that in a sense, what was remarkable, I mean, even in the public comments about the Madleen, was that it set the bar for people to understand that Palestine was the center of this, but it was about all of us, that all of our rights, all of our sense of common humanity was being threatened. And I think that in that sense, that succeeded. I mean, it brought a lot of people that I see, brought a lot of these people like onto the stage, said like, look, there's something here profoundly wrong. This is baby formula. So how was the spirit in the Handala?
I've been asked this question many times, because people were like, how is it, like, you're on an open sea, you're going to meet killer machines, so people would expect that we are scared, but it wasn't. The spirits were always high. We were always in contact with our sisters and brothers in Gaza and the occupied territories in Palestine, and we knew that this needed to be done. And, if you are not carrying any weapons, and if you are not going there to carry violence, if you are only there to serve for the truth and, seek for justice, then you just know that you're not doing anything wrong. And that takes away so much of the fear that people thought we have. So, and also there's an aspect to the sea, the vast sea. It's very spiritual. You understand that we are so small in this world, when you're in the middle of the ocean, and then you look at the ocean and you understand that the ocean is also death for so many people. For the Palestinians, they again, just 2 days ago, the Israeli occupation forces said that if anyone goes into the water, they will be met with full force. The only place where they can maybe get some food for their families, is also being denied to them. And then considering the fact that so many people that are fleeing the wars in so many other countries through the Mediterranean to reach Europe, fortress Europe, are drowning at sea. And we had that situation while we were on the Madleen. We had so many Sudanese, almost 40 Sudanese young men on a very small boat, close to drowning. And we could, we could get 4 of them out of the water, and the rest were caught by the Libyan Coast Guard and brought back to Libya. And since the Madleen up until now, I've seen, I follow it very, very closely because I've worked in 2016 with many Syrians who came from the Mediterranean, who made it actually through the Mediterranean, because thousands of them didn't make it. So I keep a close eye on this very big issue. And so many have drowned in these past 4 weeks. And we have to speak about these issues, because the very same countries that these people are fleeing to are the countries aiding and abetting those wars in their homes.
Very much so. Very much so. I mean, the image of Elan Kurdi in 2016, which is his 3-year-old dead. I mean, it's something very strange, because it in some sense, it feels like we're in the age of cruelty to children, which is something that I really have not experienced before. I mean, I experienced forms, I come from Argentina, so I experienced forms of political monstrosity. But in some sense, like, children were always to be protected.
Well, that's actually not true. We are not experiencing this for the first time in the Middle East. On the continent of Africa, many children are being exploited, starved, and killed. This has always been a huge issue, even though children have special protection. Right?
I think that what I'm trying to say, sorry for interrupting you, it's not that it was not the rule. It's that we try to hide it. Governments try to hide it. They try to deny it. They try not to show it. When Elan Kurdi appeared, like, on the beaches of Lesbos, I mean, lifeless with the red shirt, governments basically moved into explaining, kind of a mea culpa, why they had failed. And somehow I feel that we're looking at Gaza, we're looking at thousands of dead children, and the governments are quite literally whistling in the other direction.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And this is what I actually meant to say, that children's lives are always at stake. And they were just very good at hiding it. But activists, like myself and so many activists around the world, who fight for justice, social justice, we know. And Palestinians have been crying out to the world for many, many decades, and no one listened. The children have a right to live in peace, in dignity, in joy. But Gaza, since 2007, this has never been the case. And now what we are seeing is a siege on top of a siege, only because of the complicity of the governments for decades. And still, seeing all of these images of the children is not changing anything. We are even seeing further dehumanization. Israeli, the Zionist entity, is saying that these children are a threat to Israel because these are terrorists. An unborn child in a mother's womb is being called a terrorist. This is the world we live in.
It's a degree of perversion of which I know no precedence. I mean, I think that I have heard the discourse. I have heard the discourse reading over, like, the invasion of Manchuria by the Japanese, or I have heard about these things in the killing fields of Pol Pot, where children were, but right. It's almost out of legends. I mean, you're now looking at it in your phone every single day. And this is actually, I think, that the strange thing about the complicity. I wanted to touch precisely on this point, which is, there are a lot of people that continue to write. I mean, both in Spanish, in German, like on my Twitter, and the public doesn't care. The world doesn't care. And I find that not to be the case at all. I find that, in a way, when people write to me about the Madleen, or people now write to me about the Handala, or they are really expressing the sense that they have no moral representation in the political systems, that they're represented by you guys getting on a boat and trying to bring baby formula to Gaza, but that it is sort of the
politics that has betrayed them. Yeah, I mean, yes. If you look at Germany, it's a proven fact by statistic. We know that 60% of the German citizens are against the weapon delivery, right? But where are these 60%? Keeping keeping silent is still it's still complicity. I know that we human beings, we are not made to watch pure violence. But the reason to speak up should not be because you just can't see it. The reason to speak up is because you demand justice.
Completely agree. I think that there is also something else that has come with Gaza, which is that it has made the duty to know, the
Yes.
moral duty to know, something that I think we had very little. I mean, I come from a place where when there were disappeared people in the 70s, from 76 to 83 in Argentina, there was a line that became kind of the insult for the middle class, which was an expression, which was, well, it must be for some reason. It must be for some reason became this sort of silent justification for disappearances, which then we found out were also tortures and people being thrown from airplanes. And it was kind of this willingness not to know. And I think that the difference, of course, is that once again, all of that was done in the middle of the night in far away, like sort of buildings where nobody had access to. In Gaza, there is nobody that can say that they could not have known, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
there must be a reason. It's not only no longer has any cachet. It's actually an expression of deep political perversion, right?
Well,
Go ahead.
After 9/11, what we have seen, and after 9/11, every Muslim or people that look Muslim, their lives have changed. I remember very well how my life changed, how the lives of my family members changed, and my friends.
In Germany.
In Germany. And imagine being in the United States. We know many stories where people were kidnapped, were accused of doing things, and then years later they were like, "Oh, sorry, we did a mistake." And this is how the imperial powers, the Western world, can just excuse themselves for being racist, and it's okay because they have made a mistake. Being racist is making a mistake.
That's remarkable because I mean, it's really murders and then oops, right?
Exactly. And in 2000, and in 2001, we have seen a campaign, a media campaign against Muslims. Millions and billions have gone into these campaigns. If you open up Netflix, even today, after 24 years, you still see that Arab men are portrayed as terrorists. And this is the narrative. This is the propaganda. And the world, they saw that too. And it's so much easier to buy into these things than actually thinking for yourself and doing your research and actually speaking to the people that are being dehumanized. And in Germany, this is very much possible because the community in Germany is multicultural. There are so many Arabs, there are so many Muslim people in Germany. It's impossible to not speak to one. But it's easier to buy into this because there is a deep-seated and deep-rooted racism in so many people in Germany. And we're seeing this again with Gaza, with Palestine. And they may not admit to this, but it exists.
It's very strange because, I mean, in the US, in some way, you can be excused from not having, any Muslim friends. I mean, not anymore really, but let's say 20 years ago, you lived in the middle of Idaho and your image was not that of Khalidi or was not that of Edward Said or was not that, your image was basically one of the attackers like Atta, one of the attackers of 9/11. That was your mental construction. But I think you're completely correct that's essentially became this sort of narrative. I mean, there was a time growing up where like every German that you would see on screen was carrying a Nazi insignia. And if you ask Americans of a certain age, they really did not know any other type of German than the one that the TV showed them.
Yes, and yes, their picture of a Muslim person was not Edward Said, but their picture of a Muslim person is the general public. You don't have to be an academic to be recognized, because being an academic, I don't agree with this. Oh, good Muslim, bad Muslim, or intellectual Muslim, or not intellectual Muslim. These are people, despite what their occupation is, despite what their educational background is. These are people. And this is what the media doesn't show. This is what people completely ignore. And it's still happening to this day. I am being targeted for 2 years in Germany because I am a Muslim woman. And I know this. Everyone knows this. When I was doing what I'm doing now for Ukrainians, I was the perfect migrant who has integrated herself very well into the German society. But now I'm the complete opposite. What has changed? Nothing has changed. The same racism is still there.
I think a lot of the question, what I was trying to point out with Said or Khalidi, was not that there were intellectuals and there were good Muslims. It's that there was a very straightforward bifurcation in the public narrative of what the Muslim was.
Yes.
And there was like an absolutely, in my mind, because I have had all my life very close, like Arab friends mostly, and Turkish friends, like since very young, because I was living in the US and I was in the academic system. What to me was always remarkable was that the basically the one of us, the one of the guys, was always available to those who were producing the narrative. And even if they didn't want to go out down to my apartment and meet my friends, there were public figures that were available to them. So it was a concerted choice. It's not that, well, we need to find like a normal guy. We need to dive down into the basements of Brooklyn. No, I mean, you had like very famous people operating in like the cultural environment. And I think that there was a very determined choice not to do that.
Yes. And you know, Martin, this is one thing, and you said that, not because you said it, but this is always like this, the thought. When I look at people, I analyze them. I analyze our environment, our systems. And every time I hear this, people say this, and they mean good by that, right? When they say they are one of us. But if you look at the world, and this goes into, for example, the integration politics of Germany. There's always this narrative, they have to integrate. But why can't we say that the others have to integrate? Because integration is not a one-way street, one-way road. You know, we all have to come together. I'm not one of them. They are not one of me, of us, you know. And this narrative, this is what we have to break through, because there's always a superior and one below. And if we continue these systems where people decide that, you know, that they can call someone, if they're good enough, oh, they're one of us, then we still lost.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. I think that what I meant by one of us was something a lot more modest, which was like, who were you getting drunk at night with? That was it. It was not a matter of like, have you adopted my culture? There was one of my favorite posters in Germany when I arrived around 2010, was a sort of a black leather jacket sleeve with like a doner, a kebab. And the reading, the signage underneath was, even Nazis eat doner, eat kebabs in secret.
Yeah, I know that one. I know that shirt, actually.
It was fun. It was a poster back then. I mean, it was fantastic. It was fantastic. And I think that's what I mean. It's like, we are already, you know, it's not one of us. We are already have integrated into this sort of culture of mixture.
But also, like, cultures and nations and borders, they separate us. They show us they divide us. But if we sit together, right? You are a Jew, I'm a Muslim, and I know you have Palestinian friends. If you all sit together, there is no difference. Humans are, you know, we always, when we come together, when I walk in this airport and I see someone and I speak to this person, we always try to look for similarities. Hey, where were you born? You know, these questions are actually questions that we ask subconsciously, because we are looking for similarities.
I must say that I'd been confused with a Moroccan sitting in Marrakesh. I mean, if I were to find you in the middle of the street of Syracuse in Italy, I would probably just address you in Italian.
Exactly. And so we are one people. We are all one. And this is what we have to recognize. And that's exactly what I went back when you said, you know, one of us. I know that you did not mean that, but I just wanted to refer to this sentence, you know, it reminded me of this, you know.
Yeah. Let me ask you two last questions, I promise. Before you jump on the plane, the first one is if you're worried for the guys in the Handala.
Well, you always have to worry. If the Zionist entity is involved, you have to worry. Just like we have to worry in Germany, you know, about the fact that they may come to Germany and, you know, they destabilize the world with the support of the Zionists in our governments. So the Zionists destabilize the world. So we always have to worry about everything. But going on a mission straight into Gaza, looking the monster in the eye, that's a whole different story, of course, because the lives of the 18 people that are currently on board the Handala, it's at risk. But, you know, it's nowhere near to the risks that Palestinians take every day. So this is what we have to focus on. I worry about Palestinians. I worry about my friends on board. I worry about the world that continues to keeping silent, and we are full of worries, you know. And this needs to change, and we can change this if we get up collectively. I don't know how many times I literally say this every day when I speak to people. This has become my sentence, like my mantra. We have to really come together, understand that we have something very important in common, which is our humanity, and use that to mobilize against the Zionist entity.
Let me ask you one last question, I promise.
It's okay.
People are writing to me constantly, asking very specifically and very practically, what can I do? And I have to tell you that, I mean, because I've been covering this with sort of great attention, and I have now what I would call friends in Gaza. There is a really widespread sense of desperation. There is a sense that you're seeing people that look like your children, you're seeing kids that look like your children, you're seeing people that you might know, people that you have come to know, and there is no way to do something that has actually a practical output. What do you think? I mean, not that you have the magic wand or you have the silver bullet, as they say, but in your mind, I mean, you've been an activist for a very long time, and you've been looking at this for really quite a while. I'm very happy to say, I have to tell you in a parenthetical note that you and I, if I may include myself in your group,
Of course.
we are those who stand on the same side of Ukraine and on the same side of Palestine. And it's for me extremely difficult to digest people that are with Ukraine and with Israel, or that are with like Russia and with Palestine. And I think that there is something in that combination that to me bespeaks a commitment to ideology about the commitment to humanity.
Absolutely. You know, growing up, I always knew that there was injustice. Very early on, I understood. I was a very sensitive child. I'm still a very sensitive human being. I am aware of what's going on around me. And at a very young age, I was like, there's something wrong. And I've just decided to speak up. It wasn't school. When the teachers bullied someone just because of their ethnicity, I spoke up. When they bullied me, I didn't know how to speak up first. But then I understood how to speak up. I understood that I need to speak up. But with the genocide, what we see is Israel could never do what they're doing without the support of our complicit countries. So I am a firm believer in BDS. Why? The white supremacists, the imperial powers, will only listen if you hurt their pockets.
We have really learned that from the Francesca Albanese last week of life. I mean, she shouted like genocide, infanticide. Nobody seemed to pay attention. I mean, people were upset, but no. And then she talked about business.
Yes.
And
exactly.
and then sanctions came.
And you know, in Germany, BDS is not allowed.
I know.
There are resolutions that say that it's not legal, but these resolutions are not legally binding, you know, but they still have the power. Why do they have the power? First and foremost, we vote these people into power. And I believe, like I'm a firm believer in BDS, I'm a firm believer that people make a nation or they can break a nation. And they can never be in power if we don't give them the power. How do we give them their power? Look, you don't need a Madleen. You have your body. Your body is your vessel. Your labor pays for the genocide. Lie down your labor. Lie down everything that supports this genocide. What does that mean? Strike. If you are in school, if you're in university, use your voice, use every room, every moment to advocate. If you are working in these industries that are aiding and abetting the genocide, organize yourself. They cannot, if one person does it, yes, they may fire one person, but if you organize yourself and you mobilize very well, they will never be able to fire 100, 200 people in a company. And you know what that will do? That will mobilize others. That someone has to make the first step. And this is, we have not managed to do this because the unions, the workers' unions, they are not with us. And this is
particularly
the
in
insanity.
Germany. Particularly.
Yes, particularly Germany. And this is the insanity. For other causes, they have stood up. For Ukraine, they have stood up. But this war, the war that we are seeing right now in the world, it's a class system. And we're seeing even the police beating, harassing, criminalizing protesters who simply use their right to freedom of speech, the right to freedom of assembly. And what these police officers don't understand is that they are working for an institution to oppress the working class, so that the working class can never, disrupt the upper class. And these police officers are a part of the working class. And this needs to be understood.
Yasemin, thank you very, very much. Anytime. I mean, you have a platform and you have a megaphone here, even if it has to be like, I mean, it's for Latin America. So there are a lot of people that know you and that are, I mean, I can tell you for a fact that are watching you and like the things that you're doing throughout Latin America. I mean, certainly Argentina, Brazil, obviously, because of your friendship probably with Thiago, but also, I mean, from Bolivia, I'm getting messages from Mexico.
Wow.
And things like videos, reels with your face on Instagram, so I'm really proud to call you, I guess, a friend. And yeah, anytime you stop in Berlin to take a breath, I mean, certainly we'll be happy to buy coffee or tea.
Inshallah. Thank you so much for this talk, and my greetings to the beautiful people of Latin America, because they don't have it easy too. Their children are being separated from them in the United States of America. And we know what happens in these detention centers. So full solidarity to them and power to them.
Thank you very much. Have a lovely flight.
Yes, thank you. And Martin, please feel free to collaborate me on Instagram, okay?
We'll do.
Okay, perfect.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.